Well, welcome everyone to part 2 of this Good News podcast episode with our Chief of Police, Chief Nishaan, and also his Deputy Chief, Chief Marc Andrews. Again, we are going to be really diving into an open and genuine conversation. Look forward to this and glad you can join us. Let's dive in.
And so, Gwyn, we really appreciate, the conversations that you've had with us, connecting us with our community, because as I said to you, we need to be informed by the people we serve, and it's not proprietary, right? So,
That's interesting. I know that you're working on developing, I believe it's an anti-Black racism committee.
Yes.
And it's really important as well, even for that in particular, that the community feels that they are engaged in the process of how that develops, and what do you have to say about ensuring that will take place?
Yes. So, one of the things that we've embarked on is this, commitment to shift traditional law enforcement to a real pro-public health model, which means that we're serving the needs of the community, not just responding to traditional crisis and within our function. And amidst that is making sure we're committing to like 7 big things. One is, you've heard me publicly acknowledge that racism and systemic discrimination exists in our sector, but is on top of doing things behind the scenes, like completely overhauling our policy framework, doing race-based data collection, because we can't actually fix the system gaps when we don't know how exactly we are disproportionately affecting communities. We're also committing to monitoring and accountability, organizational change. We've embarked on a voluntary work with the Ontario Human Rights Commission, which is, first of its kind in Canada, because we don't want to wait to be told. We want to be able to do that. But to Gwyn's point, one of the key components in this is this, engagement piece. And for many, many years, chiefs have had, and Marc calls it we show up at a barbecue, eat a samosa, shake a couple of hands, and it's a very transactional, set of interactions with Chiefs Resource Council. So right. when there's crisis, I can say, I lean on my council. So I've deconstructed them and rebuilt them because they were very, we have 60% of our population is racialized. We weren't fully inclusive. So from Arabics, Asiatic, a Black council, youth, LGBTQ2S+, Indigenous, Eastern European, Spanish, Latin. So those all exist. But we want to very specifically bring people alongside of us to inform how we can, over the years, deal with anti-racism. And so Gwyn's mentioned that we are establishing, in addition to all our existing, is an Indigenous Anti-Racism Advisory Committee, a Black Anti-Racism Advisory Committee. We are hiring experts in the field to come alongside of us, inclusive of the Ontario Human Rights Commission to be part of it, and our municipal leaders, in the cities. So people's big question is, well, who's on that Anti-Racism Advisory Committee? Do we have a commitment that it's really, listen, we already have people that, fully support us. We need people that are going to help inform how we make these big changes to our training, our culture, our interaction points with the public. And so I think this is part of our previous one. I think when people need to hear from me, and that I'm committed to making sure the composition of the people who are on our anti-racism advisory committees, especially the Black committee, are people who have been affected and have had line of sight to these experiences. Because, other than that, we're just in the same, cycle of we've always done. And so that's really, this external people to our organization are the ones that have to help be the voice and barometer from an accountability piece. We also are hoping to establish an independent governing entity outside of our police services board. We don't know what that looks like because it's not been done in Ontario before. We're consulting with the province and other entities. And we recognize that, this is what is going to help us from a formative standpoint make adjustments as we move through our work over the next several years.
I was just actually wondering, thanks for that, Chief Nish. In terms of policy work, is there anything being done at this moment, at least to start the process of various departments taking a good look and having that the work done through the anti-Black racism lens? Anything working on that? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have about 80, Marc, is it 80 recommendations that are intended to change our internal policies that ultimately affect, how we interact with the public, boots on the ground. And a perfect example is how we've revisited our youth engagement programming from an anti-Black racism lens. We know, I'll use an example here in Peel, Gwyn, where we saw the intersection point between the education system and policing negatively affect the black community. And, particularly we have, ceased our school officer program,
Yes.
which is a huge policy thing. You heard me say, as a young person, I wouldn't be in policing if I didn't have a positive interaction with the police officer. It's very valuable to us, but we have to acknowledge that a program that we had that was left unnurtured for many, many years, especially where it intersected with how the school system did not appropriately handle behavioral issues, and they leaned on policing to deal with youth behavioral issues. It negatively affected a young Black child in our school system, which drew attention to the fact that we had a program that in the eyes of our Black community was an extension of how police interacted with the Black community, and very specifically within the walls of schools. And so we put pause on it. We brought a specific youth, and under Marc's leadership, a youth engagement, a Black advisory committee, and they, we heard some, the hard truths about how that policy and program of how we dealt with youth, and as a result, we've changed our policy now. We do not respond to behavioral issues in any school system, Catholic, public, private. Of course, we're there for when injury or there's a need for us, but we now our policy is if we need to step into school, we our first choice is to wait till the child is not in school to deal with the parents after hours, but not to respond and marginalize or stigmatize any race or color. So that's a perfect example and that came from listening to our community. In many police agencies, you'll see have stopped their the youth officer, school officer programming because the trustees and the boards have said, we don't want you in our schools. We chose to do it ourselves because we stopped and listened to the public. So there's an example of a policy and a programming change that we've taken on. Now we recognize youth engagement is super important. So we use that voice to rebuild a youth engagement program that can still exist in a variety of other vehicles and forums. And we know if we want to build resiliency in this community, the youth are our future, and where there's space to not maybe do behavioral stuff, but build capacity. And when it comes to cyberbullying, human trafficking, road safety, we want kids to be safe, and we have a role in that space. But telling kids about the effects of drugs and whatnot, that's a health narrative that needs to be owned by health. Behavioral needs to be, we're not the specialists when it comes to youth behavior. We do, I got to first say, Canadian officers, and I know this because I meet many international chiefs, are some of the best trained globally. The best standards of training, quality of individuals we hire. But despite that, this is one of the seismic shifts we want to see is strengthening other systems to be more meet the needs of the community. So it's not really at the doorstep of police all the time, right? From mental health, addictions, you name it.
For sure.
80% of what our officers attend is non-criminal. It's food security, homelessness, housing, older adult isolation, youth issues, addictions, and we are doing our best to be able to pull other entities alongside of us. But we also have to make decisions as it pertains to our programming and service delivery to say, we know that some communities have been affected negatively. We're going to make some changes our own, and we're going to use the voice of the community to help inform what that looks like.
Yeah.
Before I turn it over to Jamie, it's like I'm taking over your program. Sorry.
All good. We're better together. It's all good.
Okay, thanks. It clicked when you mentioned the 80 recommendations. The first thing I'm thinking that the community would be asking is, how did these recommendations come to fruition?
The Ontario Human Rights Commission has but in 2019 proposed a set of recommendations that to the entire province to say for policing to address systemic discrimination, systemic racism, and that's after decades and decades of work, tribunal hearings, research, consultations that they have presented as the optimal set of framework for policing. In February of 2019, and this is pre-George Floyd, I had a conversation with the chief commissioner to say, hey, I'm interested in making change here in Peel. Can you tell me what this would look like? Would you be willing to talk to me about what this would look like if we were to consider adopting them? Some of them are really, difficult ones that need, a lot of thought, and some are, they make absolute sense to do them right now. And so we have been working with them to formalize the recommendation, and we are not constructing them. I've got a whole project team which would love to introduce you to Inspector Joy Edwards, who is leading the work with the commission under one of our other deputies, and we're hoping by the fall to have them finalized, Gwyn. And when they're finalized, part of it is to fully communicate them publicly, to have a direct line of sight for the public to not only see that, but we're going to have a public anti-racism advisory committee to steward the work so that it's public driven.
Yes.
And what we've gone one step further is to say to the Human Rights Commission, they're going to file the recommendations with the tribunal. And should we not deliver on them over the years, they have the ability, from a legally binding standpoint, to impose them on it. But my commitment is, if we want to see policing change, we need willingness of police leaders to say, "Hey, we see that this is important work. Let's do it voluntarily."
Amazing.
Yeah. Oh, this is so helpful to hear, and I think it would be very informative for people. Thanks again, Nish and Marc, to both of you. Just a couple of things we haven't touched on yet that I think I've heard certainly people asking about as we've listened, as you are. One would be around some of the training around mental health, just because that can be such a huge part of any call these days. And then the other would be around the body cameras, and just I know some people wonder about what's happening with that. So if I could just ask about those couple specific things, be appreciated.
Sure. Why don't I do all us? Marc oversees our mental health response programming, like the soup to nuts stories, so I'll let him do that. But let me quickly speak to the body-worn cameras. So body-worn cameras is, first of all, not a new technology. It's been around for 30, 40 years. It is not panacea for everything. It's another tool which, will allow, from a trust piece, accountability, from telling the story differently, is one which is one of the recommendations from the Human Rights Commission. It's one which our Police Services Board and the mayors, both Mayor Brown and Mayor Crombie, really advocated for. And frankly, we see it as a valuable activity, and we're, in the span of weeks, we are going to be the largest police organization in Canada to roll out body worn cameras on all our officers. Right now, it's in multiple divisions already. We're hoping, Marc, I guess I can't have the exact date, but 1,200 body worn cameras out. Again, another initiative that on its own is a monumental project, which is also being informed by the community. We know that they have a lot of questions, concerns. It's a big change, but we intend on using it as a tool for the, and people are saying, how do we know, Nish, that you're actually going to commit to improving transparency and accountability? And this is one. I use the analogy; it's just one arrow in the quiver.
Yeah.
It doesn't solve the whole thing, but it is one. Marc, the mental health and addictions, is one of our greatest, demands, and we've seen how a failure in those systems brings somebody to our doorstep almost daily. 20, 30 times a day. Marc's got the stats. 16 times a day, we apprehend people. And this is where we're asking and advocating to the province and the government for changes in mental health funding for CMHA and the right institutions to support it.
Yeah.
Also changing legislation. It's a head scratcher that the only legislated entity to take somebody to a hospital in mental health crisis is policing. And we'd all do our head shake. We know we're the 24/7 go-to, along with paramedics and fire, who are our partners and see this, 24 hours a day. But things need to change so we can do that. But in our space alone, we have some of the best trained capacity. And Marc, maybe you can speak to all the initiatives and program we've got there.
Yes, Chief. So the chief was correct, and I think you have a sense, Jamie and Gwen, that the mental health crisis response piece is a huge piece of impactful in terms of the workload for us. We're looking at 8,000 to 9,000 mental health crisis response calls per year for the last several years, and every year the number increases by about 5%. Wow. Yeah, and those numbers are on the low side because those are just dedicated mental health crisis calls. There are other calls that have a mental health component which we weren't capturing previously. We're trying to improve our data analytics to be able to really see what the impact is, and I'm sure we'll see that the number of calls that have a mental health component, which may not be the actual driver of the call, but it has a mental health component, will be significantly higher than the 8,000 to 9,000 that we had in 2019, which is the last year we have complete figures for. But we're, in order to properly respond to that, we as police, we're not equipped to. Let me actually back that up. Responding to mental health crisis with law enforcement is less than ideal, and in fact you're creating a situation where there's the possibility for negative results, and when you do that over and over again, we've had some incidents in our own region here in the last year and a half where we were at Ijaz Chowdhury's house multiple times. Police were being used as the primary tool for managing mental health crisis, and that is being replicated across the region, not because that's what the police want to happen. But other systems, as the chief said, other systems don't have the capacity or the capability to properly provide service. There isn't, one of the things that will strike most people is incongruous is the fact that we have 3 mental health beds for every 70,000 people in the region of Peel. That is the worst ratio in the province. So when we hear segments of the community speak about funding, as police leadership, we've been advocating for refunding and properly funding our partners, our community partners, community agencies, so that they have the capacity and capability to take on their work. We've established programs, one of which is the MSIR program, mental health crisis rapid response teams, which are a combination of a police officer and a healthcare worker, a mental health care worker, that respond to crisis calls. It is not a new program. It's new here in Peel. We launched it in the January of 2020, just in time for the pandemic, and it has been tremendously successful. The chief spoke about, at the time we were apprehending somewhere around 18 to 19 people a day. That's, apprehending is a nice word for arresting them and criminalizing mental health crisis. Because even though we're taking them to a hospital, you're still taking them in a police car. And when we brought on board the MSIR program, when you do the data analysis on both pieces, when we have an MSIR team respond to a mental health crisis, we're apprehending around, it's less than 20% of the time. When you have a police-only team responding, you're apprehending north of 80% of the time. But because of because our community partners are not being funded appropriately, or at the level they need to be, we now have 3 MSIR cars on the road for about 12 hours a day. So and what the analysis indicated is that we need a minimum of 8 for a region this big and this populous. So, still the vast majority of our calls are being attended, mental health crisis calls are being attended by police-only teams. Now our police officers are well-trained. They're very capable, enthusiastic, young men and women. But when I go to parades and I prior to COVID and even during COVID, and I ask, who here volunteered or joined the police service to be a frontline mental health care worker? I have yet to see a hand. Nobody's going to put up their hand.
For sure.
The fact is, that's what our frontline officers are. They're frontline mental health care workers. And we're criminalizing mental health crisis when we force police to be the only point of intersection. But the vast majority of those incidents end positively without any use of force. But when you do it over and over and over again, and Mr. Campbell is the perfect example. Police were being used as the primary and only response to his mental health crisis, and it ended up in a tragic set of circumstances. We need to stand up and support and build out community partners on those agencies so that they can take on their work and off-ramp a crisis before it becomes crisis, and before it becomes a situation the police have to be involved in. And I just want to, one last thing. One of the things that we're doing, as well as shifting paradigms in terms of how we, work with our community to address mental health crisis, we're leveraging technology in a unique way. The chief spoke about the body-worn cameras, and I know he'll want to fill up on this, but the intersection between mental health crisis response and technology and how we utilize that presents us with an opportunity to do better, to be more transparent and be more accountable. And I'll kick it over to the chief to sort of fill up that a little bit.
Sure. And so just to top up, we see, our vision, Jamie, is to not just change how we intersect with the community and public, but to modernize our policing approach and be really innovative, but not from just a bright and shiny, toy, but using technology as a platform to serve better. So, one of the considerations we're doing is embedding a crisis worker in our 911 communication center. So where we can't get a crisis worker to the doorstep of a call service is use the ability for the body worn cameras to potentially two-way stream, to the crisis worker to provide the officer additional tools to connect somebody to services. And so these are some of the ideas we really want to shift by pulling community partners to it. We're actually, Marc's exploring the possibility of an alternative response mechanism that doesn't even have an officer for the very low tier type of mental health or wellness demands. And we see that the tools that we're investing in will be a platform for that to do better.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, guys! Thank you so much. This is incredible. So much going on. I know we're just scratching the surface of all that's happening in your world and your leadership there. Want to really be careful with your time and appreciate all that we've been able to talk about so far here. Would love to close with a prayer in just a minute for you, for this whole conversation, for this racial reconciliation. But Gwyn, if you have any last questions, want to give you a chance at that, and then be glad to close in prayer.
Yeah, I just want to let you know that at least I'm sharing this as a Black individual. I understand the passion in my community to have change immediately, not even immediately, but like yesterday. But I also am a realist, and I do understand that in order for us to have deep change, proper change, it will take time, and it will take us really coming together and focusing on what we need to do now as a collective, as a community. And so I just want to encourage everyone to understand that we've got to keep the vision high. We've got to stay focused on what needs to be done and where we want to go. And, to make that commitment to work collectively together to push and implement change as we move along. It's not going to be easy, but that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. We are going to make it work, and as long as we all are committed to the development of our community and making sure that everyone is treated with respect and equally, we will do this. We will get this done. We will get moving, and we'll create a better future for our young people. So thank you for your leadership, Nish and Marc, and you keep focused, keep at it, and we appreciate your commitment to this work. Thank you, Jamie, as well, for creating this opportunity. We've got to keep it going.
Absolutely.
Keep it going.
Absolutely.
Keep positive. Keep it going. Keep at it. That's how we'll bring about change.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, Gwyn. Yeah. Marc and Nish, anything last that you would want to say to add to the conversation? You don't have to, just want to give you the opportunity.
No, yeah. Thank you, Jamie. And listen, Gwyn, thank you so much for the thoughtful comments. I want to, make sure that everybody that is going to watch this understands and has the full confidence that, right from me, I intend on making this community, this police organization, the most progressive organization in this country, if not internationally, for the purposes of serving you, our people, better. And not only making this the safest possible community that we can have. And that's just not like aspirational. We're going to do it. And it will take time, and we will make mistakes along the way, because we are the humans behind the uniforms too. But I want to just make sure that those listening hear and believe with the fullest of sincerity, and that from our hearts, we intend on doing that. And we're thankful for the ability to share some of that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Nish. Marc, anything that you'd want to add to close off today?
I'd just like to echo the Chief's commitment to doing what is right for our community, listening to our community. We're committed. We've pushed all our chips to the table and to the center of the table on this. And we understand that there's going to be turbulence and there's going to be mistakes made. And when we make mistakes, we'll look our hands and say, that's on us. And look for ways to make improvements and be better.
Yeah.
And I do think the most important thing in guaranteeing success and improvement is the fact that the community is going to be at the table to help with this process. Mm-hmm. And you understand the importance of that. The community is expecting that, period. And with that, them being at the table to be a part of this process and to be for your organization to be as transparent as possible. I believe, again, that's how progress will be achieved. Moving forward, working together, bringing their voices, their concerns to the forefront, and making sure that they're part of making this city great. So thanks again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, let me pray to close off this conversation for us, for our Peel Regional Police, for your leadership, for all of us to play whatever part we can in helping to bring this about. And thanks again, both of you, so much. Gwyn, too, for this conversation. We're going to try to get this out into as many people's social media feeds, inboxes, whatever, because there's such helpful information here that I think are going to increase people's awareness, but also the commitment that you have. And yeah, just appreciate it all. Let me pray, and then we'll be on our way here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Loving and gracious God, we've delved into a lot here in this conversation. Thanks for this space that you have brought about where we could be so open with each other. We pray for Nish and Marc and the leadership within our Peel Regional Police Force, that you would continue to bless, guide, strengthen, bring your creativity and ingenuity at a time where it's needed more than ever before. And on those days where things are challenging, that resiliency to keep at this for all of us in whatever ways that we are able to keep moving this forward, so that we will be able to be a human race together, that we would be able to eliminate all racism, including anti-Black racism, that we would continue to work towards that. Yes, it's a tough journey. It's a long journey. It's a hard journey, but help us to hold on to the belief and the hope that with you, all things are possible, and that in time, over time, that these changes will continue to help bring that about, a life of freedom and equity and equality for all people who are all your people, because we're all part of your beautiful creation. So we just entrust all of this to you, oh God. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Good job, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Oh, guys. Yeah, I look forward to the day we can be in the same room together at the table of reconciliation, where there's a meal at the center of that table. We can actually share it together and be together.
And I'm going to cook that meal.
Well, I'm not a great cook, but I'm willing to help in any way that I can. Love to you guys, and just thanks so much for today. Yeah, thanks everyone. Please, everyone, when you get this, when you receive this, in whatever way you can, please share it with others, because there's such an important message for people to hear, not just in Peel, but all over our North America in particular. This is a message that we would love for as many people as possible to hear. Thanks for sharing together today, Marc, Nish, and Gwyn. God bless you, everyone.
Well, friends, thanks so much for listening and watching this incredible conversation that I think for me, certainly, and I hope it was the same for you, just brought so much light to the hard work that our police force are doing here in the region of Peel. Grateful for these two amazing leaders. And you could see the value that they bring, the depth of thought, the deep care, men of great faith, and exceptional leaders at all levels, bringing an authentic change to this conversation and this movement that we're really trying to bring racial justice and reconciliation. So thank you to this amazing police force, and we want to continue to work together as a community. So listening, being a part of this, you're in it too. I know you are. Keep praying for this conversation, this movement, but also for our police force, for the region of Peel, for our officers who do their very best every single day. And absolutely, like all of us, are working to get better. God bless them. God bless you. Thanks for joining us again on this very special episode, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.